Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of the Bison Video Blog, brought to you by Gate City Bank with Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo. Missouri Valley Conference play is here for 2023. North Dakota State back on the field this Saturday. Homecoming. They have yet to leave Fargo here over the last month outside of the trip to U.S. Bank Stadium. They'll start actually playing road games next week. This week, it's the University of South Dakota that comes calling for homecoming. Jeffrey, the Bison off a bye at 3-0, relatively healthy. We got somewhat information from Matt Ince today about Nick Kubitz's status. That's the only guy right now the Bison have a real question mark out of their starting 22, which is pretty good shape after 3 games.
Well, especially compared to last year.
No doubt.
The team was really a huge mass unit. Nick Kubitz, I think, has really developed into a top line flight linebacker in the FCS. I like his physicality. I like the way he's directing the defense. You know, Luke Wirtz has been pretty good, but I think Kubitz is just a tad better against the run. And so having him back, and they originally thought it was a high ankle sprain, but it's not. It's just an ankle sprain.
Ankle sprain, right,
so,
yeah.
So tape it up and get out there, right, son?
Well, we'll see. I'm skeptical, but, I mean, Kubitz is a tough guy. And I thought he really started to come into his own when Wirtz got injured in the playoff game against Montana. After that, Kubitz got his first sack, fumble recovery. He really started to elevate his game in the postseason.
Well, he's been around here long enough, you know, so this is the time when you're in your 3rd or 4th year. It's either sink or swim when it comes to the depth chart and playing an everyday role at linebacker. NDSU's never rotated linebackers as far as I can remember, especially in the Division I era. It's always been the guy, so this is the first time they've really gone to 2 guys, and that was last year. I think maybe if they could lean to one guy a bit more, I think that's what their preferred option, if you
Especially considering how good he is against the run, I think they would lean in that direction. But we'll see what his status is when we get to Saturday. We mentioned this on Hot Mic this morning that I think the Bison resume got better without them playing this weekend. Eastern Washington won, Central Arkansas won. You look at the latest polls, they are both ranked. Now the resume has 2 non-conference ranked wins next to it, Jeff.
And that's a really key, I think, this time of the year. And if you're looking at down the line with playoff potentials, Eastern Washington, after that opener, you thought, okay, man, maybe 3 wins, 4 wins. It just didn't have the feel of a team that really was that good, to be frankly with you. And then they go out to Fresno State, almost won at the FBS game in overtime, and had a nice win at Davis last week. And so now they're number 20. They're 17 in the media poll. Central Arkansas 25th in the media poll. Central Arkansas left out of the coaches poll, but as you know, the coaches poll, I mean, hey, student manager, can fill that out and send it in.
Central Arkansas is exactly where I had them ranked. I have them 25 in my poll at Eastern Washington, 19. And this could be a carbon copy of what I sent to Greg Haley this morning.
And furthermore, though, Derek Powell, the outstanding running back for Central Arkansas, goes for 257 last week. I know it's Abilene Christian, but it's still 257. And I think right now a front runner for the Walter Payton Award. I don't know how else you can say that. I mean, he's second in the country in rushing, but has played against some decent teams. And
Oklahoma State to start, and North Dakota State. I think you're spot on that. No one's going to touch him in that conference. I'm convinced of that. If Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, they want to get mad at me, fine. He's gonna run wild in that league, I think.
And as we know, the Walter Payton is a statistical award. I mean, that award, when it comes down to it, it's all about the numbers, because by and large, most voters just don't really see the whole FCS. It's not like you're watching ABC and seeing the top 25 in the country.
All right, on to South Dakota. Bob Nielsen in his 8th season. Maybe there was some surprise, I think, on the outside that they decided to come back. I don't know if turmoil is the right word. David Herbster left right before the season, longtime athletic director, take a job in the private sector. So the man who hired him isn't there anymore. I'm interested to see where this goes, this football program, and what they do beyond this in hiring their next athletic director.
Well, I'm guessing they don't know either. I mean, will Bob Nielsen be an athletic director candidate? And he's done it before. I think he did it at Duluth. And so you can't do both, obviously. And, you know, he's been around a while. Some guys just want to give up on coaching, but here they are. They're remarkably balanced on the 151 yards a game passing, 149 rushing. And if there is a recipe to come in for the upset, it is right there. You need to be able to run the ball, you need to be able to throw it, and you need a playmaking quarterback.
We'll get to Mr. Bauman in a second. Matt Entz brought up their defense, which is improved. They have two really good linebackers, Brock Mogensen, Stephen Hillis, who are all-league players again. Miles Harden on the outside, number 1, has been really good. Nick Gaze, you see him there, has been a monster up front for USD. They've got some guys on defense, but that is perennially where they have struggled against the Bison. NDSU, outside of that one game in 2015, has been able to set the score on what they want to do against South Dakota.
And even last year when the Bison went down to Vermilion and had an awful first half, I remember Logan and I on halftime, I think my comment to her was, I've never seen NDSU play such a poor half in as long as I can remember. And then they came back and won pretty handily. So, but that was, South Dakota didn't have much resistance in the second half defensively. We'll see how that changes. They're only giving up 13.7 points a game. And again, it's St. Thomas
and Lamar,
which St. Thomas goes out and gets hammered by Harvard. So we don't really know. It's hard to judge the caliber conversation and competition on these teams as we sit here after non-conference.
Their loss was to Missouri, which Missouri's turned out to be a pretty good SEC team. They beat Chris Kleiman's Kansas State team at the buzzer a couple weeks ago. So we'll be intrigued. Now, the quarterback is a name that every football fan in the region will know. Aiden Bauman. He is the son of former Viking quarterback, former St. Cloud State great Todd Bauman. Big guy, Jeff. 6'5", 245 pounds, out of Buffalo High School. I remember him as one of the top-level high school quarterbacks in the state of Minnesota. He originally committed to Iowa State. He transferred. He ended up starting the final 4 games of last season. He was named to the All-Missouri newcomer list. Left-handed, which automatically grabs your attention. But again, he is a big boy that's going to be throwing the ball.
Size obviously sets him apart from a lot of quarterbacks. Reminds me a lot of Chris Strevler. I think Strevler was a bit more athletic, but just as strong as Chris Strevler. I mean, he was in that mold. Strevler was like 240, I want to say. I mean, he was a big dude. When's the last time the Bison faced a lefty? We think Matt Barr.
I found it. Pat Kehoe from Delaware. Remember he was a statue. Bauman's better than him. But the advantage now, and asking Matt Entz, they see a lefty every day quarterback in Cole Payton, so they have an advantage there. You would think inside that they know what a lefty can do and his normal tendencies are.
Well, I think there's a difference.
Yes.
There is. Yeah, I mean.
Well, the blind side is now the right tackle. It's not the left tackle.
Right, there's a subtle differences when it comes to football, and I think for South Dakota to come in here and win and pull off the upset, Aiden Bauman's got to play great. He's got to play well. He's got to use his legs. He's got to make NDSU guess on the 2-dimension. Are you going to throw? Are you going to pass? And that's what Matt Barr, speaking of, did so well when he came in with Western in 2010 and won at the Dome. I believe that was homecoming too.
It was.
So,
Kolpack getting the bat signal out here. I look at the running game. Nate Thomas and Travis Tice. Tice was really good a couple years ago. He was banged up in the 21 game against NDSU, and last year he had some early success, and for some reason they went away from him. New offensive coordinator is something to keep an eye on as well, because that was part of the tumultuous season that USD had last year. Yeah,
brought Josh Davis over from South Dakota State. Obviously, he knows how to call a game against the Bison. Did quite well in Frisco last year, so he obviously knows some things. Nate Thomas, 7.9 yards in average. They're going to need that kind of production. Tice is more of the short yardage bulldoze. He's at like 4.3 yards per carry. So again, if you want to look for the upset here, and that's what if you're a South Dakota fan, you got to be that balance, and they come in with a balanced team.
The Bison are healthy. That's the one thing I'll look at this, and I'm interested to see how they play starting off Missouri Valley Conference play. Real quick before we wrap, as you look, now we're into league play. And UND goes to Brookings. Boy, that's a heck of a combo here. You played at Boise, then a week off. Now the Jackrabbits in Brookings to start conference play. I'm intrigued to see what happens.
Well, now the rubber hits the road. Now we're going to find out who the true Valley contenders are going to be, and it's not going to take long. No. I mean, if UND goes down there and plays well and even springs that win, that puts the Hawks right there in the conversation. If they get blown out, different deal. I think it's going to be a really good game. I do.
Mo State, SIU, what do you think there? SIU, we've been really high on them. They're 3-0, but this game perennially gives them issues with Missouri State. So the game's in Carbondale, so I don't know about this one on Saturday.
It's a good thing it's opposite. When Craig Bowl went to Missouri, the plaster field, they played bad every time they got plastered. It's just some teams just don't play other teams well.
And another one is Youngstown at Northern Iowa. So if Northern Iowa's for real,
Youngstown's for real.
Right. They have to. Whoever wins this game, I think they're in the conversation. Okay, we're gonna have to pay attention to them as the season goes forward.
Big games right
How
off
is
the
that
bat.
possible? It's the first game of conference play, but that's where Northern Iowa's at.
That's because you and I like to overreact when it comes to college football.
Seriously, that's where Northern Iowa's at. If they lose, they're 1-3. It's over. Because they still haven't played the Jacks and they haven't played the Bison.
And a decisive loss to Weber, which got killed by Montana State. I mean, you could play the comparison score game until the proverbial cows come home. But there's been some interesting head-scratching, head-banging against the wall comparative scores.
Real quick before we go, it is homecoming weekend, which also is Hall of Fame weekend. It is a big weekend for Bison football. Wide receiver great Tim Stralo's going into the Hall of Fame, as is Jared Essler, the pride of Minot, North Dakota. And the 1983 national champions are going to be recognized on the 40-year anniversary of their title team, one of the all-time great college football teams. This is going to be a really fun weekend. Jeff Bentram, I heard, is going to be back in town. I mean, they're bringing back the greats. They're going to be back here this weekend.
Well, he was a freshman quarterback, 83, true freshman. Him and Chad Stark leading the way. And, those teams were FCS in quality in some respects. One was strength and ability to run the ball.
Essler a part of that 2003 epic win at Montana. Tim Stralo part of some dynamite teams in the late 90s that actually threw the ball. I actually found highlights of him catching the football, having some big-time plays.
The fact that wide receivers going in is worth a standing ovation.
Right? And that's what's going to happen on Friday. Big week of coverage coming up, of course, on WDAY and Inforum.com. Jeff and Mike McFeely have stories all week. Of course, we'll be back with the Bison Media Zone show Wednesday morning at 10:30, leading into NDSU and South Dakota. Saturday at the Fargo. Note the early start time, 1 o'clock on Saturday. Thanks so much for watching the Bison Video Blog, brought to you by Gate City Bank.